Hi, I'm Steve Connor. I am the Director of Central Hampshire Veterans Services. I have 10 towns here in Hampshire County and over 200 clients, and I've been using mediation skills for 7 years.
I'm Ray Janke, Belchertown Veterans Agent. I've been using veteran mediation skills and training for the last 5 years.
I'm Gary Howe, Veterans Employment Representative for Franklin Hampshire Career Centers. We represent 50 towns and about 150 to 160 veterans. And I brought the Veterans Mediation Training Program to our site and trained 5 veterans as well as others to get the skills that I use today.
And I got to help train, didn't I? That's right. Yes. For me, going through the training and taking the skills that I learned have come in really, really handy. I, as part of the training, had twice gone into an official mediation done by the court, and both of them were housing, which was really good because, as it turns out, housing is a huge issue in my life and in my job. I am on the state committee to end veterans homelessness, and I get to see what is creating it, how to prevent it, and understanding that the skills that I was taught, that I use, are just the way that it has to happen to get people either housed in the beginning or allow them to keep their housing. It is basically like everything else with mediation. There's usually conflict. We have veterans who, if they come into my office, it's usually under an emergency, or they've hit rock bottom, or they're starting to get their way out, and one of the ways they get out is through a HUD-VASH program, and so they get a Section 8 voucher, and they're moving into apartments. And it's getting the veteran to understand, you know, how to deal with the landlord, but also getting the landlord to understand what it's like to be these veterans who may have been homeless for long periods of time, chronically. And they've got different skills and different coping abilities to get through life, and it's not always what we're used to having in that landlord-tenant relationship. So getting that worked through for landlords has been very important in myself helping veterans get housed.
In my office, veteran mediation training has helped put the hope back into resolving the issue at hand for the veteran and or the family members. Many times they come into my office, they're burdened, they're heavy-hearted, and they're concerned that there's no way to resolve the issue at hand. A lot of times I'm listening to what's going on, and in my mind I'm saying, what are the tools I can impart to these people so that they can resolve their own problem or come up with solutions on their own so that they can work with the other parties or see a solution on their own. Most of the time, a lot of people don't realize it's a matter of communication. They look at themselves and go, that wasn't that hard, or I wish I thought of that myself. And I go, well, don't be so hard on yourself. I'm here to help, and I'm here to listen and try to connect you to the right resources. The other thing we do in my office is connect bridges. A lot of times, the two parties don't know how to talk to each other. First off, they stand there and say, who's going to start the conversation? What do we talk about? Where do we go from here? A lot of times I say, I'll start. I'll pretend I'm party A or party B, and we'll see where it goes from here. Many times we even laugh at the situation and go, that was actually fun. Or I didn't realize that these were possibilities until we discussed them. Or I didn't even think that they would care enough to give me an option to resolve this issue. Many times the problems are resolved. Occasionally we have problems that aren't. But the veteran or the veteran family member realizes that if there isn't a way to resolve the problem, they look at other options and other possibilities. At least there's still hope. We give them the bridges of communication and tools to be able to solve problems and realize that they can be the master of their own destiny and see that other people do care and want to work with them.
That's great. That's that hope aspect. My job is primarily, if you look at my job description, getting a veteran a job, employed, etc. But that's a journey, that's not and the key often is to listen first, and that's the key, is to hear what that person is bringing in. They're not just a veteran, that's not the only thing they've been. Like, all three of us are veterans too, I should put that in. Army, Navy. And because of that, there is that, and we do have an empathy, we do have an understanding of perhaps that element. And what I try to do through the training that I got from Veterans Mediation is to listen objectively and try to come up with some questions that might elicit a response from the individual that looks like it was their idea. And when they come up with that answer, it's much more affirmed. They feel they own it. And then they can move forward. So we start doing a focus, we start looking at a plan. Should I refer them to Ray if they need some economic support? Should I refer them to counseling if they need some clinical types of stuff that I'm not able to do? The whole idea is to have a person find their way, give them a little direction and some empathy and some hope, and then have them come back. And they do. We have people that come back year after year just to check in. Sometimes the floor is dropped again from a new job. We go from there, we build. We keep building bridges and giving hope. And I'm really proud to work with the people in this valley. We amongst ourselves, use mediation just to get across funding streams and other things to benefit a veteran and or his family.
Yes, benefit providers and information referral. There's oftentimes we send someone to get a benefit that we feel that they need, or they come to us and say, how do I get this? If you're in the military, somebody tells you what you need and they tell you how you're going to get it. In the civilian world, you don't have that opportunity. You will go and one place will ask for these forms and this identification and this bank statement and that thing, and then you go to apply for something else. They want some of that same stuff, but oh no, I also need your Social Security card and your Medicare card. Oh, and I need it. And that gets really frustrating for veterans who are, you know, in a system where you just go to get what you need and move on. So the Veterans Mediation sometimes just helps that veteran understand what it's like and the requirements of that other person on the other side of that counter, and then sometimes the other person on that counter to understand what the veteran has lived through and what it's like for them to go through that kind of rigmarole, for lack of a better word.
The other thing I want to emphasize is that empathy and teamwork is very important. I don't know everything. Neither does Steve or neither does Gary. But as a team, we can work together, helping resolve the issue at hand. And empathy, putting ourselves in the place of that person and thinking, how can I best meet their needs and how can I put them in a better way? Make them a little bit better so that when they walk out of my office, they feel the hope and that there's a better tomorrow.
And empowerment.
And empowerment, yes.
Right.
And
in other words, and we work on trying to get people the things that they need, veterans and their families, things that they need. And I think through the mediation training and establishing empathy is so much better than being just sympathetic, because then we're looking at somebody and we're looking down and saying, well, here, we'll give you this, move on. We now have a Veterans Expo rather than a stand down, because we've all decided in that group that we no longer have to give veterans a hand out. We need to give veterans a hand up. And that's the difference between sympathy and empathy. We're there to try to get everybody to understand where they're coming from, but we're just trying to get the veterans what they need. That's our job.
And mediation, the tools for mediation helps me to navigate through funding streams to get stuff for a customer that's in common with all of us. They might need work boots because they've got a job. Well, I don't have money for that. Veterans Inc. does. So we work together all throughout the system, whether it's mediation regarding our own, working amongst ourselves, or on behalf of the individual themselves. So the veterans community stands to benefit from veteran mediation training throughout the state.
Yes.